Quick note before we start. Everything in this video is based on researched, publicly available information, and figures like net worth are historical estimates. This isn't financial advice. This series exists to inform and motivate, to break down how real fortunes actually get built. In 1936, a 12-year-old boy boarded a ship in southern China with almost nothing and sailed to a country he'd never seen. He would spend his afternoons after school selling rice, sardines, and soap in that father's tiny store. And decades later, he would die as the richest man the Philippines had ever produced, with a fortune estimated at $19 billion. His name was Henry Sy Sr., and if you've ever set foot in an SM mall, you've walked through a piece of his story. This is part one of a special episode inside our Richest Filipinos series, focusing on the immigrant kid with a shoe cart. Henry Sy was born on October 15, 1924, in Jinjiang in China's Fujian province, a region that produced many business leaders. His early childhood was during a brutal stretch of history, warlord conflict, and soon after, the Japanese invasion. At age 12, Henry followed his father to the Philippines, arriving in a country with a language and culture he had to learn from scratch. After school, young Henry worked the counter. This wasn't a hobby. This was survival-level retail where every centavo mattered. Then, World War II hit. During the Japanese occupation, the Sy family's store was looted, wiped out. Henry watched his father lose everything and have to rebuild from nothing. Not once, but repeatedly through the 1940s. He didn't inherit an empire. He inherited a habit, watching a shop counter, understanding a customer, and starting again. In 1948, at just 23 years old, he'd already opened his first store, a small shoe shop in Quiapo, Manila. His first inventory wasn't fashion shoes. It was surplus U.S. military boots, GI boots left over from the war. In 1949, he secured a 1 million peso credit line from China Banking Corporation, a bank that trusted immigrant merchants. A 23-year-old with a shoe cart's worth of surplus boots and 1 million pesos of borrowed trust. That's the starting point. The one decision in 1958 that turned a single shoe store into the seed of an empire. That's where part 2 picks up. Quick recap. A 12-year-old immigrant from Fujian, a family store wiped out by war, and by 1948, a shoe shop in Quiapo, funded on trust. In 1958, Henry Sy formally established ShoeMart, the store that would eventually give the entire SM conglomerate its name. Not C Mall, not anything with his surname on it. ShoeMart. It sold shoes, and it sold them well. Sy learned something in that sorry store. Know your customer's real constraint. In post-war Philippines, that constraint was price and durability, not style. For over a decade, ShoeMart stayed exactly what it sounds like. A single-category retailer, expanding store by store, city block by city block. This is the least glamorous part of any billionaire's story. 20-plus years of unglamorous, disciplined retail execution. Then, in November 1972, Sy opened SN Quiapo, his first true department store, a 20,000 square meter operation. Here's a detail. He put his 22-year-old daughter, Teresita, in charge of running it. Not a hired executive, not himself, his daughter. Teresita would become one of the most powerful businesswomen in the Philippines. This 1972 bet showed how the Sy succession model would work. Through the 1970s, the department store model kept expanding. This is where Sy made a decision that had nothing to do with retail. In 1976, Sy acquired a struggling savings institution called Acme Savings Bank. On paper, this made no obvious sense. He wasn't a banker, but Sy understood. If you control consumer foot traffic, you're sitting on a distribution advantage. Banking is fundamentally a distribution business. That 1976 acquisition was the second load-bearing pillar of what would become one of the largest financial institutions in the Philippines. What happened to that bank? That's a completely different story, and it's one that nobody in Philippine retail saw coming. That's part 3. Last part, we left off with Henry Sy, a shoe and department store retailer with zero banking background, buying a struggling little institution called Acme Savings Bank in 1976. Here's what he actually did with it. Sy renamed the bank Banco de Oro, BDO, and in 1996 converted it into a full universal bank, meaning it could now offer the entire range of commercial banking, investment banking, and financial services that a savings bank legally can't. Here's the strategic logic, and it's worth slowing down on because it's genuinely instructive. Sy already had something almost no bank starts with: foot traffic. Millions of shoppers walking through SM stores and malls every week. Instead of building a bank and hoping customers would come find it, he built a bank inside the customer flow he already owned. Branches inside malls. Payment infrastructure tied to a retail ecosystem people were already using daily. That's a master class in what's sometimes called adjacent leverage. You don't need to be a banking expert to succeed in banking. If you already control the one resource banks spend the most money trying to acquire, a captive, recurring customer base. BDO grew steadily through the 80s and 90s, but the real inflection point came in the 2000s, when Sy started using BDO as a platform for aggressive consolidation, buying up smaller, weaker financial institutions and merging them in. The biggest of these moves, in 2006, Sy's group acquired the remaining 66% stake in Equitable PCI Bank, at the time one of the largest banks in the country. In 2007, Equitable PCI was fully merged into BDO, and that single merger instantly made BDO the second largest financial institution in the Philippines by assets, and it would go on to become the largest bank in the country outright. Let's put this in perspective with the bigger picture of this entire series. Almost every billionaire we've covered has built their fortune around one dominant, essential industry. Henry Sy is one of the very few who successfully stacked two completely different essential industries, retail and banking, into the same empire, and made each one stronger because of the other. Retail funded the credibility and infrastructure to acquire banks. Banking then gave the retail empire access to capital, credit lines, and financial services it could sell right back to its own shopping customers. It's a closed loop, and closed loops compound. But there's a piece of this we haven't covered yet, because banking wasn't the only major bet Sy made outside shoes. In 1985, years before the Equitable PCI merger, he made a decision that had nothing to do with banking or shoes at all. What Sy did next was a bet on an entirely different kind of infrastructure, one that would eventually reshape how an entire country shops, socializes, and spends its weekends. That's part 4. We left off right before Henry Sy's next big swing, And this one is the bet most people actually associate with the SM name today: malls. On November 8, 1985, Psy opened SM City North EDSA, the first SM supermall. This wasn't just a bigger department store. It was a completely different concept for the Philippine market. An enclosed, air-conditioned, all-in-one destination combining retail, dining, entertainment, and services. Remember the timing here, minus 1985. This is the tail end of the Marcos era, a period of serious political and economic instability in the Philippines. Betting hundreds of millions of pesos on a massive, capital-intensive mall project during such uncertainty was, by any conventional measure, a genuinely risky move. It worked spectacularly, and the reason it worked gets back to something we touched on with the banking story. Psy wasn't just building a shopping venue, he was building infrastructure for a middle class that didn't have many air-conditioned public spaces to spend a Saturday in. The mall became less like a store and more like essential civic infrastructure, a place for families, for dates, for job interviews. That's a very different value proposition than a bigger place to shop, and it's part of why SM malls became so deeply embedded in Filipino life. From there, expansion accelerated hard. Through the late 1980s and into the 1990s, SM opened malls across Metro Manila, then into Cebu. In 1994, SM Prime Holdings was incorporated and taken public on the stock exchange, giving Psy access to public capital markets for even faster expansion. And then Psy did something that very few Philippine conglomerates of that era attempted. He took the mall model outside the country. Starting in the early 1990s, SM began opening supermall developments in southern China, leveraging his Fujian roots and China's economic opening. Today, SM Prime operates around 70 malls in the Philippines and several more in China, alongside residential developments, hotels, and office towers. What started as a single shopping center on EDSA in 1985 became the largest mall operator in the country and one of the largest in Southeast Asia. Retail gave Psy distribution. Banking gave him capital. Malls gave him real estate and a physical monopoly on consumer spending. Three legs, each reinforcing the other two. That's not luck. That's a deliberate architecture. By the 2000s, Psy had shoes, department stores, banking, and the largest mall network. Most would have called that a completed empire. Psy didn't. In 2005, he made one of the boldest bets of his career, buying into a business unrelated to retail or real estate. That's part 5. Last part ended with C already running the country's biggest mall network, biggest bank, and one of its biggest retail chains. In 2005, he went somewhere nobody expected. In August 2005, Henry C's group acquired an 11% stake in San Miguel Corporation, the beer, food, and beverage conglomerate. This would later become the base for Raymond Ang's rise to become one of the Philippines' wealthiest men in his own right. C held that stake for 2 years, then sold it in October 2007 for $680 million, a substantial return. He'd become a genuinely skilled capital allocator, willing to take a large position in a business he didn't control, purely as a financial investment. From 2006 into 2007, while the Equitable PCI acquisition and BDO merger were happening, C was running a major bank consolidation at over 80. Then came 2008, the global financial crisis. Markets across the world collapsed. Most conglomerates spent that period playing defense, preserving cash, and cutting exposure. C's group did the opposite in key respects. By 2010, his personal net worth had reportedly increased by an estimated $5 billion from the pre-crisis trough. The biggest wealth swings often happen not during the calm periods, but during the crisis periods for those with capital and conviction. By the 2010s, Henry C. was in his 80s and 90s, and the conversation shifted from empire building to empire succession. In 2017, he formally stepped down as chairman, taking the title of chairman emeritus, with Jose C.O. stepping in. But succession had happened gradually over decades. Remember Teresita C. Cosin running a department store at 22 back in 1972? C had spent 50 years progressively handing his 6 children real operating control across retail, banking, property, and strategy. By the time he formally stepped back, there was no power vacuum because the next generation had already been running the business for years. That structure is exactly why 6 of the 15 Filipino names on today's Forbes billionaires list are C siblings. In January 2019, at 94 years old, that story reached its final chapter. That's part 6. We've followed Henry Sy from a 12-year-old immigrant with nothing to the architect of one of Southeast Asia's largest conglomerates. Here's how the story ends and what it built. Henry Sy Sr. died on January 19, 2019, at his home in Forbes Park. At the time of his death, Forbes estimated his net worth at $19 billion, ranking him as the 53rd wealthiest person in the world, and for the 11th consecutive year, the single richest person in the Philippines. He was laid to rest at Heritage Memorial Park in Taguig. Tributes came in reflecting how deeply the SM ecosystem, its malls, its bank, its stores, had become woven into ordinary Filipino life. Beyond the business empire, Sy and his wife, Felicidad, established the SM Foundation, which has funded scholarships and health care for underprivileged Filipinos for decades. In September 2024, the University of Santo Tomas inaugurated the Henry Sy Senior Hall in his honor, reflecting his support for Filipino education. Today, SM Investments Corporation remains one of the largest and most valuable conglomerates listed on the Philippine Stock Exchange. 6 of his children individually rank among the 15 wealthiest people in the country, on top of their shared family holdings. So, stepping back, what's the actual takeaway? First, nearly every major leap came from stepping into an adjacent industry he didn't start in. Shoes into department stores, retail into banking, retail into real estate, and eventually equity investing. He didn't diversify by accident late in life. He diversified as a repeated, deliberate strategy, decade after decade. Second, the banking and mall bets worked because he built businesses inside the customer relationships and foot traffic he already owned. That's a very different and much lower risk form of expansion than starting a totally unrelated venture from scratch. Third, and maybe most important, succession wasn't a single event in 2017. It was a 50-year process, starting when he put his 22-year-old daughter in charge of a flagship store in 1972. The transition had already happened. That's the difference between a family business that survives its founder and one that doesn't. That's the story of Henry Sy Sr. from a 12-year-old with a shoe cart to the founder of the family that now makes up nearly half of the Philippines' billionaires. Let me know in the comments which part of this story surprised you the most. The banking gamble, the mall bet, or the succession plan. If you want the rest of this series and other Filipino billionaire stories, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode.